So some of this talk so far today have been a little bit technical. So for me, this one, although it's talking about AI, it's all about the personalities, relationships and connections and collaboration. I think that's what's really stood out for me in our AI and Send pilots that we've been doing. It kind of starts with this picture. These are the two most important people in the pilot that we've done. So Lucy's going to be talking soon about her work in it. The lady on the left is Olivia Bray. She's no longer with us. She hasn't died, she's just left the council. But she was fantastic for us. So she was like a Send improvement officer. She knew everybody at the council, and she was a great nagger. So before we got to know her, she was sat on the same floor as us, and she was always talking to us about work experience for Send children. It's a big thing for her. So eventually we kind of folded, and we took a couple of Send kids last summer. So it goes back about a year, this story. On work experience, and we showed them all about the website, all the jobs that we do on the website, all the different careers that they could do, and they weren't interested in any of that at all. All they're interested in is YouTube, films, creating films, everything around that Minecraft. So kind of stuck in our mind, and we thought, what could we do to actually do something in this school with these kids around films, work experience, that kind of thing. So it led to us working with the Northampton Film Festival. And did some work experience project with some of these kids from the Northgate Beehive School. And next year, West Northampton is hosting some of the Women's Rugby World Cup. So to get them film experience, we, Becky Carrier from the Northampton Film Festival, worked with them over about 6 to 7 weeks, creating like a trailer film for the World Cup. Fantastic film at the end of the day. We had a premiere in our One Angel Square atrium building. Kids really enjoyed it, really inspired them around careers, that kind of thing. And what it did was build that relationship with us, Olivia and the Send team. It really cemented relations between us, the DTI team and her service. Kind of led to us, we didn't know her before that. We talked all the time on the floor, got to know what she was working on. And one of the issues, kind of wicked issues, hard issues in their service was one of the EHC processes forms, so education, health and care plan. So this is an e-form that's been on our site for many years in a previous iteration using Granicus forms. I don't know if I'd like to say that in this workshop today. So we knew this was a form they wanted to redo. So Lucy was working on the forms with them, kind of talking about redoing that form. And there'd been plenty of chatter within the council and publicity around this process. So if parents think their children has got a potential SEN need, you can fill a form in, it comes through to the service, and they get assessed to see, yes, we do think you've got a need, you need an assessment, or no, we don't think you've got a case for this. So the SLA for it was about 20 weeks. It should take 20 weeks from the time the form gets submitted into the service to that assessment process being completed. That was the SLA. But it was nowhere near that. I think it was like something like a year it was taking. Lots of kind of issues in the service area, due mainly to the amount of applications that were coming in. The team couldn't just process or cope with the applications coming in. So we had a chat with them, had a meeting with them about what we could do. And in the back of my mind, I was thinking, we could potentially use AI for something like this. Having no idea really how we would do it, what we would do with it. We knew a big part of the plan, the process, was education psychologists. So at a certain point in the process, the psychologists work with the child to work out the issues, the problems with the children, and then put the plan together. So when we had the meeting with them, my pitch to them was, could we replace the education psychologists with AI, having no idea if that was a thing, if that was possible, how we would do it, whatever. That was the kind of starting gambit for it. And they said, well, that's not really going to work. There's a shortage of education psychologists, but we wouldn't look to use AI to replace people like that. But they got really excited by it and thinking, well, we could use it much higher up the process, much earlier in the process. So when the forms do get submitted, there's some children are just like obvious yeses, they are going to get assessed. Some are more complicated, some are obvious nos. And they said if we could really speed up that first part as a trial, that would really help us. So this is Alice O'Rourke. So again, she's no longer with us. She left, but this was a fantastic contact in the team. So Alice and Olivia, they work in the Send improvement team. That was the meeting we had with them both. She became a massive advocate for us at the start. So she really led us into the service and was an advocate within the service, talking to the service to say, yeah, this is something that we could do. So a bit of back and forth with conversations with both of them. How could we do it? How would it work? They were going behind the scenes then to talk to their management team to say that this is something that we think we could look to improve the process. So that led to us then going to one of their education management team meetings. This is a slide that comes up quite a few times in this presentation. That was going in there to try and alleviate the fears around AI, all the scare stories about things like that. Someone in the room there's about 50 of them in the room from the SEND service. They thought AI was artificial insemination. That was their first. I started to laugh when he introduced that. Nobody else was laughing. That was what they actually thought this was. But that was a really surprising meeting. They were all for it. There was no people in there really scared about it. All the service were like, this is something we really want to do. We really want to help. They had lots of different ideas on how this could be used. Probably they were the people on the ground, probably the senior management, the directors, they were a little bit more sceptical on it. They were the ones that we had to really handheld through this. So we got their backing for it, got the sign off, thought, brilliant, we can do this. Having no idea how we were going to do it. I was kind of newish into my role in the innovation team. Didn't necessarily know about all the massive skills that Kevin's got on his side. Within the council, we're massively, so much work, so many projects in DTI. Every day we get a new project come in. I didn't want to then drop this on Kevin to say, can you create some kind of AI chatbot to run these assessments? So perfect timing. Siraj came onto the scene for us. I think he was lobbying our chief exec and Rebecca Pennell, our assistant chief exec, to say, we've created this new kind of emerging technology team. We really want to do some pilots to test out this AI technology, different new technologies. Is there anything you'd be interested in? And obviously we just started to look at the AI and SEND, so that was a really perfect opportunity to put the two together. Fantastic for us that Siraj offered a free pilot for us. He might still be not massively pleased that he offered that to us, and because it was supposed to be for 8 weeks. I think we're 4 months into this process now, and we're still going strong. But hopefully he was still pleased that he offered it to us. So we had an initial meeting with Siraj and some of his team, and they kind of pitched this process to us again over 8 weeks. This is their proof of concept process from rapid scoping at the beginning. I'd say the rapid scoping process, that was on time. We did well with that one. Anything Jadu touched, it was really good, in terms of their processes. The discovery part, and then all the way through to how they would play back the options, build a POC for us, present it back, and then look at the next step. So this was probably around April time, I think, that we started this. We had one full start on our side. We got assessed by Ofsted, so we had to pause everything. Again, just the way Jadu worked throughout the whole thing. They were fantastic. We paused everything for about 4 weeks, and then picked it straight back up again once the Ofsted inspection was over. This was kind of the first team that we had. So some of our DTI people there. It's great that we've got Rebecca and Chris back in this from the beginning. Some of the Jadu team there as well, myself and Lucy, and then some of the people within the SEND service. This was our kick-off meeting. Lots of people online as well. Our chief executive came to that, so really good backing from above. Steve did a fantastic presentation to pitch to us to say, basically that process, this is how the proof of concept will work, this is how we're going to work with you, just to set all the terms of reference. And it was a fantastic building across the road in the Guildhall. So this is, last week Chris and Anna pitched to the rest of the council our innovation hub that we're doing, this launch of innovation within the council to supercharge a lot of the work, trying to get everyone in a war footing to look at innovative ways that we're going to work. And this was one of the pictures that he showed in that. So we're showing the existing SEND process. This was the first day. Rhiannon had a fantastic workshop with Mike from Jadu and our SEND team, and basically the whole day just mapping out all the end-to-end process on that. I don't know if that was the whole thing. I think it might have gone longer than that. Either the yellow or the blue post-its, they were areas that we thought automation could come in. There was lots of areas. We'd kind of started with AI at the beginning to say this was our pitch, this is what we wanted to do. There was lots of opportunities, and I think Rhiannon and Steve weren't shy in telling us there's lots more you could do to automate this process, just getting different systems in, getting things out of spreadsheets. But that was really kicked us off to say how many opportunities there could be for us. They followed that up then with a few workshops with individuals within the service. And again, I think the motivation of the service was brilliant. They were really laying that on the table, all the problems that they've got. They were a service that was getting kind of hammered in the media by parents, but they were really up for transforming and looking at opportunities. So again, that relationship with Jadu the trust that they'd got to open up, the way Rianne managed that workshop was just fantastic, I think, from our side. For the next, probably, I'll say a few weeks, it might have dragged on a little bit longer than that, just in terms of those workshops, Jadu were great at writing everything up, and then did part of their process was then to play all those options back to the service. Now, because of our SEND service, the way they work, they have parent partnerships, they're all into co-production, so it's not like we have one person as a product owner in the service. Lots of people were involved in this process, so that does slow things down a little bit, have to sign things off. But these were all the different areas where Jadu came back to say, look, looking at your process, this is where we think AI can fit into this. So one of them was around the production of the plans, potentially once you've got the assessment done, the education psychologist, the service write the plans, that is something that potentially machine learning could do. That was one, I think that was probably a bit too far for the service at this stage. There's a few of those on there they didn't want to go anywhere near at the moment. So we settled on two, or the service settled on two. One was around using Gen AI opportunity for guidance on the website. So this was one at the beginning I wasn't particularly excited about. It was more about the machine learning for the assessments, but more and more through the process, and we'll talk about a little bit later, that became much stronger. And some of the things that we're looking at doing in the council now around family hubs, early help, that's going to really come to the fore to hopefully help with that. And then the machine learning around the assessment stage and the form, how we could do that. So they were the two that we settled on. Probably at this stage then Olivia left. That was a massive blow to us. So in terms of like the risk to the project, that was huge. She'd been fantastic at galvanising her service because it's co-produced with the parent partnership. There's so many touch points that they have to do to make sure everyone's involved in this. It's very politically in a good way because they want everyone's buying and backing from the parents to get involved. So that was a risk. That is when Lucy and our team had been part of this all the way through, but massively then stepped up to fill that breach and did all the kind of communication and touching base behind the scenes with the service to really keep the momentum going. So I think, Lucy, you're now going to talk about the next stage with the form and the assessment.
Yes. So obviously with Olivia leaving, I tried to kind of inherit some of her knowledge of the service, but there was a lady that was also then brought into the proof of concept. Her name is Candice, and she does still work here, and she's really working closely. She's currently taking some very well-deserved leave, actually, but she's been absolutely crucial in getting this pilot moving forward, getting some of the digital foundations, which I'm going to talk about, so the online form, to then support us with obviously the machine learning part behind the scenes around that decision making. She was absolutely crucial in that. So here is the online form. There were lots of conversations. Richard's talked about co-production, so I kind of worked very closely with Candice, and then she would kind of offer support in handing the form over to anybody else who would need to see it, or she'd give me the contact details and we'd make sure that we could arrange for schools, other professionals. There's a partner that we're very close with, the West Northants Voices in Partnership group, lots of very knowledgeable people that are part of that were really close in the testing of this form. Just to highlight a couple of features of the form. So previously, obviously Richard's mentioned, we had the form on the Granicus platform, but the old format wouldn't have worked with obviously the machine learning piece that we wanted to implement, because just the way that form was collecting data, the service had obviously had planned quite a while ago that they wanted to redesign the form. They wanted to ask for more information up front from the education professional or the parent so that it would help them later on down in the process. So we took that decision that they'd already made and we decided to then recreate the form, those digital foundations, to obviously enable us to connect some machine learning in later on. So just highlight a few features. We've got a question right at the start that asks what their role is in relation to the application. The main, audience for this process is an education professional because they have a lot of detail and knowledge about the child that is sort of in the picture. Obviously, the parent or carer of the young person themselves can also make a request for an assessment, and then any other relevant professionals can also make requests, so foster carers, social workers and health providers, etc. So what that question at the start then does is it will direct you to whether you need to complete this form, or then we have 3 other versions with just changes in terminology to make sure that the journey for that particular user makes sense, because we'd kind of originally been given the form by the service and it was just one version. The questions were please tell us the views of the child. And obviously, if you are the child or the young person, it just, the wording doesn't make sense, it doesn't sound right. So we wanted to make it as user-friendly as possible for all the different audiences. There's lots of different features in the Jadu platform that we've made use of. You can apply or make a request for a child or young person up to 25 years of age. So we've put a max limit in there for anyone over that age, and then we've given a bit of directions to say you can't, and give them the reasons to why they can't apply. There's loads of different validation features. With the date of birth feature as well, we've then later on down the line we ask what year they started at their education setting, things like that. If it's if the year is later than if the year is earlier, than the date of birth, then it will come up with an error to say, please could you correct one of them because it doesn't quite match up, just so that the quality of the information when it gets to the service is as high as it possibly can be. This is further down into the form where it really gets into like the proper detail, and I'll show you a little bit later what I mean about that kind of detail, and this is the part that really does matter when it comes to the machine learning and training that model. So it's asking about if the child has certain needs, so there's physical and sensory needs, it could be independence needs, it could be cognition and learning, that kind of thing. So we ask, what's the priority of that need if they have one, and then, what's the child doing well in that area, and then it kind of goes into a bit more detail about what, how does it impact their education and things like that. Just to touch on, so this was obviously raised in the earlier session. There's been lots of opportunities that have opened up through this pilot that aren't actually directly related to the AI and Send work. One of them being that we use this opportunity to then create our Rate This form that we've then been able to, I think, use almost like a bit of a pre-fill feature. So the question at the start that says you're leaving feedback about this form, that automatically pulls through the name of the form they've come from. So then it obviously enables us to collect feedback of the person's experience. And as this is a new form that we've just implemented, we really do want to get that feedback just in case there's anything wrong with the form itself, not just their customer experience and their journey using it. So we've kept it very simple. It's just sort of inspired by other, obviously, a bit like the Rate This page stuff, kind of inspired by other Rate This form experience features we've seen. We just wanted to keep it as, how would you rate your form experience? Very easy to extremely difficult. And then just if you've got any comments. We do try to avoid people like entering personal information, just because, again, we're not directing anyone off to, the complaints page, but we could do that in the future, a bit like obviously what we do with the Rate This page feature. But yeah, extremely valuable. Can't appreciate getting feedback after the transaction enough, just because they've gone through that full experience. So when they get to this point, they've got a really clear idea of what it is they want to say, if there's anything they want to say. Another opportunity was rebranding the forms. So on the right-hand side, because the Jadu platform was actually inherited by one of our legacy organisations, so Northampton Borough Council in the previous day, the branding we'd sort of overlaid with the West Northants logo, but there were still kind of touches of the NBC, the burgundy and things. So we really wanted we used this project as a bit of an opportunity to jump on the rebrand. Ignore this burgundy, this has now been corrected. But it just to kind of tie in that it's, it's West Northants, the West Northants view. And then obviously when people are obviously filling in this new form, the full vision, the full view of West Northants Council is there, rather than this kind of like mismatch of some of the colours. It just gives us the correct identity. So yes, two very exciting opportunities that have been kind of fast-tracked by this project with Jadu. Now, I did this in the last one. This is a bit more of a technical slide, but I just wanted to give a bit of a translation of the machine learning part to this project, and it's the stage we're at now, basically. So we're developing, now that the form is live, we're developing the machine learning model behind the scenes. So the view of how it will work is the form will be submitted into Jadu Connect, and then the APIs within Jadu Connect will pass the information in the submission through into AWS technology. So when we talk about things like data preparation, we're talking about anonymizing that information, because the machine learning model doesn't need to know any kind of personal information, doesn't need to know the name, doesn't need to know the date of birth, the gender, anything, because we don't want that to sway a decision based on their needs, their cognition and learning needs, that sort of thing. So the data preparation, we did have discussions, and Kevin kind of helped me understand this a little bit more earlier. We did have discussions about replacing the personal information with like fake personal information. but that could run the risk of the machine learning model then identifying like, okay, Jane Smith comes up a lot, so anytime a Jane comes up, that must mean that they're more likely to be, identified as a definite yes to be assessed for their needs. So instead, we're not replacing it with anything. It's just going through as completely blank data. What follows it all the way around this process is the connect case reference. So once it obviously makes the decision as to whether yes, this is a definite yes, or it's a maybe or it's a no, it then feeds it back through with the reference, and then it ties it back into Jadu Connect. One thing to keep in mind with this, obviously we have to teach it, we have to make it learn. We can't just switch it on and it will know exactly what decision to make. So what we have within the Jadu Connect system is a really simple graduated response question that the send service will basically have to complete. So anytime a form submission comes through, they'll go into that, and once they have obviously their EHC panels, that's where they make the decisions as to whether children should be assessed or not. They'll then go back into the case reference, click whether it was a definite yes, there was a bit of deliberation, but it was a yes, or it was a no, and then that decision will then be fed through the machine learning model for it to then learn those outcomes before we then decide with the service, are you confident enough that it's making the right decisions based on what you've told it, based on what it's learned? Are you happy for it to start identifying some of those definite yeses? And just kind of touching on obviously what Richard was saying about trying to ease some of that like nervousness with the service. Whenever we talk about this process, it's very much, it will be led by humans, consistently throughout the entire thing until the service are completely confident that it could be used to kind of identify those definite yeses. And that's the idea, is it's supposed to speed up that part of the process then, so that the services aren't sitting looking at all of those ones that are very clearly a yes, but they've got to spend 10, 15 to an hour going through all of the supporting evidence to come to that definite yes decision. So the idea is it should speed up that part of the process. And I just wanted to highlight quickly one really exciting workshop that we did do when we started to talk a bit more about this machine learning model, was we took some parts of the form. So obviously I was saying earlier about when we start to talk about the identified needs of the child, those parts are where the send service would look to make their decision on whether a child should be assessed. So we sat down, we used a tool called Miro, which is like an online whiteboard system, and we got everyone on a call, and we basically went through each of the questions, obviously how does this impact on the child's education, and then the service then kind of informed us, like these are the sorts of phrases, these are the sorts of terms, some of like the keywords, and you can see there like Makaton and just sort language, now and next, like some of those really key indicators as to, okay, if they've mentioned that, then we're more likely to kind of look a bit more and see if it's a yes to assess. So yes, I will hand back over to Richard. Back to this lovely slide.
So as we were going through the whole project, the support from the service was brilliant. There was not a lot of nervousness there. As we got closer to going live with the form, that started to change a little bit, and they started to get quite nervous about this and thinking, actually, we're going to be having AI models that are making decisions and doing all this kind of thing. So that's when, again, anytime that slide comes up, that's when we were going back into the service, back into their management teams, meetings, and then just presenting to say, look, this is where we're at, this is the stage we're at, the form is going to go live to start with, there's no AI attached to it, that model will get built, and then when we're ready to go live with the AI, we'll come back to you and present and say, right, this is all the detail. The AI can work in the background, it's been working in the background, it's now up to you if you want to use that to start making your decisions or to test it. One of the things that Rhiannon said about throughout this process was about digital fundamentals, like the basics, having those things in place. Some of them weren't in place. So Lucy talks about the form, having to rebuild that. That is a monster form. Mike Holmes from Jadu built that. He's probably still in therapy after building that and rebuilding it and then mapping it to Jadu. He did a fantastic job. So they came into this as an emerging tech team looking to use AI, and Mike was learning how to do Jadu forms. So we're massively appreciative of him for that. So the form was one part. The other part that they wanted to do in the service then was around like the kind of chatbot to dig into send information. So I'm sure like most councils, we've got a local offer directory. There's lots of information in that. We've got a family information services directory. We've got lots of pages on our website with support for parents. We've got a Northampton Trust microsite that's got lots of information on. We've got an independent send partnership support team. They've got a separate website. So that's when we started to think, well, actually, this chatbot could be really powerful in bringing all of that content together, because our main site search doesn't search those pots of information. So rather than it just being, put up a chatbot that just ticks a box like a lot of them that you see do, we thought, actually, this, if we can really train the model, train the data, could be really powerful. And then you can start to ask it questions, not to the level of if you're asking an educated psychologist, but if you can train that up. We went to a parent partnership picnic and talking to some of the parents there and how they would potentially use a chatbot, and how they were saying a lot of their information comes from talking to fellow parents and understanding what process they've been to. So if you can think how you can start to get that real information into a chatbot somehow, so it's not just saying the standard answers, how you could grow that over time, I think it became a really an interesting option for us, and I got a lot more excited by it. So when we started that work, again, being led by Rianne, she wanted to do the whole user research part of that. So with our local offer team, we went to this picnic in the park day. Every time Rianne comes to Northampton, the sun's out. So I think they had 2 sunny days, and she was here for both of them. This was great in terms of, I guess, PR for us as well. The digital service going out and meeting people on the ground, asking them how they use the website now. Would you use a chatbot for things like this? And it was just really interesting to listen to some of their frustrations about how they get information, how they do all talk together in Facebook groups, and that can be great to share information, but then if someone shares the wrong information, that goes across everybody as well. So it was, very interesting for us, but just another example really from our point of view working with Jadu, that they came to that day. It was their idea to come to this. You weren't forcing them to do anything. They were all about that co-production and wanting to get on the ground, and they brought loads of brownies there to share with the parents. I'm sure they appreciated that. It was just a brilliant partnership really, and definitely a new one for us in terms of how we've worked before. So we weren't asked to put this value-added slide. This was just from our side working with Rianne and the team. Has just been really fantastic experience for us. We've learned a lot in terms of what our methodology can be for these pilots. The slide I showed you at the start in terms of their process, I think we blew that apart very early on. So it was great that they were able to pivot from that and think, well, you're not going to be able to work to those timescales, but we'll fit this in and we'll work around how you work. Obviously, got fantastic background in public sector, and Rianne's worked in the SEND space as well. So the empathy that she could work with the service to know what they're going through and the parents what they're going through. This is not a technology-led project. This is like a people-led project, and the technology can come in the background to it. And then just the wider support they gave really, some of the list on there. So that was the picnic on the left. We had our annual tech showcase event on the right. Steve came and presented at that for us. Earlier in the year, we created a homelessness recovery film. That was the premiere for it on the right there. One of Jadu's vice presidents came down for that one. And then on the left, we showed the film again a couple of weeks ago in our atrium, and Siraj came up for that one. So it wasn't just a case of doing this project and let's do it, tick a box and go. They've just been involved in the whole thing, not salesy, just, I'm doing more sales for them talking about that stuff. But just really, just a great partnership and great people to work with, really. So where are we now? Kevin touched on a lot of the chatbot idea earlier. We've got to change the name for a chatbot. I think it's a really, you just think chatbot is a simple thing on websites. What we're looking to build and what Kevin's doing is going to be really powerful and really some depth to it as well. So we're looking over the next few weeks to have something that we can start testing with the service. And then the ideal now, I talked about family hubs, early help and intervention. If we can grow that chatbot to include lots more of that information, kind of like how Google works now. If you put in certain search terms into Google, their top result is like an AI snippet. So they're answering the question and then having links to lots of other information, and then their standard results underneath that. If we can embed our chatbot into our search like that, once it's really powerful and it's tested and we're confident on it, we think that could be a real game changer for our search. We get lots of feedback about couldn't find this, couldn't find that. We get all our Google Analytics around failed search terms. We've done a lot to improve our search, but being able to pull lots of those different websites together, rather than just potentially going and buying a different directory or doing something else in this space, we're really excited about. So that's hopefully to come over the next few weeks. The form is live, what Lucy talked about. We've had about 25 or 30 people are partway through their submissions now. So once that's submitted, that data's there ready to feed the model. And then the work that Kevin's doing here. So it's not a completed project by any means, but having those, big lesson learned probably is around those digital fundamentals, the basics. This became a huge project around the form, lots of testing that the guys did, and putting that in place has now allowed us to do the AI work. So, yeah, that's kind of our story up to date.